Warm welcome to all present here. Firstly, I welcome Professor Kaushik Basu sir. We have our President sir, Professor Dr. Prashantagiri sir. We have other dignitaries here and students and our EFA teachers. We have our respected Sharada Prasad Namata, who I'll tell you later afterwards. That let's have a little suspense about that. Okay, so we have all here. I welcome all of you today. Again, as I said last time, we'll stand up and give a loud ovation to Sir and ask him to come up on the stage. I would also request Sharada sir to please come up on the stage. Professor Kaushik Basu sir is a professor of C. Marks, Professor of International Studies and Professor of Economics. He's with us always. Actually, we don't feel like giving him a formal welcome because he's a part of the Nanritam family. He's our mentor. He is like a lighthouse for us. We have Professor Prashantagiri sir, who is just a synonym of Narendrapur. Narendrapur without him is like I spoke to many of them. They said without him it's nothing. So we having him here, our children feel that they are enlightened, they are happy, they feel pleasant to talk to him. Rather, listening to him ask is nothing. We have Sharada sir here. He is a person who has devoted his life for the education for all. And this all would not be possible. I know the person is getting irritated and will be irritated. Would not be possible without our secretary Ranjana Singh Gupta. She thought of it, she planned it, and we had everybody here. Felix School also is here because of her. It's very, as it was said in the morning, I repeat again, we have got many feathers in our cap. I start with our Anushi Nigar, who is the first runner-up in the international storytelling. We have here district science officers is here, so he can tell you that we did get the best school award, and our Nilakshi also got an award. We have award coming from Dubai, the holistic approach which Felix is made up for. And I think we are we because we have so many good mentors. Our children don't feel that they are in a remote place like Para or in Purulia. They are exposed to many, many great stalwarts, which many metropolitan cities children don't have. So I think in the absence of many of them, we'll have to give a loud applause to all the mentors who are with our children. Before we continue, we have an opening song by our students of standard 7, 8, and 9. So let's enjoy the song first.
উচ্চারিত আলো সেই তো তোমার আলো সকল দ্বন্দ্ব বিরোধ মাঝে জাগ্রত যে ভালো সেই তো তোমার ভালো অন্ধকারের উৎস হতে উচ্চারিত আলো সেই তো তোমার আলো সকল দ্বন্দ্ব বিরোধ মাঝে জাগ্রত যে ভালো সেই তো তোমার ভালো পথের ধুলায় বক্ষ পেতে রয়েছে জেগে হো সেই তো তোমার গেহ সমর ঘাতে অমর করে রুদ্র নিঠুর স্নেহ সেই তো তোমার স্নেহ অন্ধকারের উৎস হতে উচ্চারিত আলো সেই তো তোমার আলো সকল দ্বন্দ্ব বিরোধ মাঝে জাগ্রত যে ভালো সেই তো তোমার ভালো সকল ডালে পাখি রহে অদৃশ্য যে গান, সেই তো তোমার গান। মৃত্যু আপন পাত্রে ভরি বহিছে যে প্রাণ, সেই তো তোমার প্রাণ। বিশ্বজনের পায়ের তলে ধূলিময় যে ভূমি, সেই তো স্বর্গভূমি। সবাই নিয়ে সবার মাঝে লুকিয়ে আছো তুমি, সেই তো আমার তুমি। অন্ধকারের উৎস হতে উচ্চারিত আলো, সেই তো তোমার আলো। সকল দ্বন্দ্ব বিরোধ মাঝে জাগ্রত যে ভালো, সেই তো তোমার ভালো। অন্ধকারের উৎস হতে উচ্চারিত আলো, সেই তো তোমার আলো। সকল দ্বন্দ্ব বিরোধ মাঝে জাগ্রত যে ভালো, সেই তো তোমার ভালো।
Thank you, Vivekananda and the choir group. I would request Sharada Prasad Mahata to please come up and continue with the program.
দেখো 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 Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think Gurumadi has introduced me, and regarding EFA, I thought I'm going to say something before this event started this morning. But after this morning, I think I don't have to say too much about the event or what EFA is. Still, since I've been asked to say a few words, I would say that it's really I would say when I look back 1 year, it's really a wonderful journey. Unbelievable, a very humble yet determined journey that started 1 year ago from this campus has now gone from this little corner of a remote part of Purulia to Ladakh, North Bengal, Bihar, and other parts of Sundarban. And we have heard stories, heartening stories from each and every individual that stood up this morning and gave a wonderful learning. In fact, I was thinking, I thought, yes, I don't know much. This unlearning and learning is quite long for me, but maybe I have understood a bit. But after listening this morning, I do understand how little I knew, how much I need to learn about this country, the corners. In our childhood, we used to, in our young age, used to say one poem, I don't know who wrote it, মানুষ রে তুই রাত্রি জেগে নতুন করে পড় জন্মভূমির বর্ণ পরিচয়. Essentially, you need to learn about your country every day. When you learn the stories from Sundarban, Ladakh, Purulia, Bakura, it's really heartening. The humble effort that we have started, we are lucky, we feel extremely fortunate that with your dedication, with your help, with your support, we are really making one after another milestones, which would have been impossible to imagine from any ordinary system. But then, Nanritam is not an ordinary place. It's an extraordinary place run by some extraordinary leaders, and extraordinary people from all around the globe comes and help it from where they come. Prashantada has said this morning, even he didn't know, but things do happen. And we are fortunate, I'm fortunate. So with much ado, I would say, in that journey, we got many, many people on our journey. The effect that we have seen in mere 6 months of implementation was amazing. Without just depending on us, we have seen those changes in our own eyes. But a third party, independent organization actually made a full impact study of this program, and they have really found that the difference that has happened through COVID, the schools that has received the EFA training, EFA books and continuous training from EFA has made a significant difference in their journey with the impact they have made to the children. Similarly, the teachers, the grassroots educators who participated in this program, they have very clearly individually said how wonderful this training was. We heard something this morning, but they have got statistical data through their presence, the books, the techniques, the pedagogy, how that has helped them away from their traditional way of teaching and making a difference. We have a published That organization, Seed Rasta, is an independent organization. They have made that report. After my talk, I'll hand over that report by Seed Rasta to Professor Basu, because and then that will be available publicly. This is no small feat that a small organization like EFA was able to carry out such a wonderful full-scale third-party statistical analysis which established that what we were doing, what we intended to do, how wonderfully that is taking root and making a difference. With that, as I said, the just a short, I think it's repeated, let me tell another time. Essentially, the scope of EFA was, in simple words, was simple. Of course, it was not quite simple in reality. Idea was the quality that is created and implemented and practiced and we are continuously developing in this Felix school, which you have heard this morning and continuously experiencing, how to take that quality to the remotest of the corner where we really need it. I emphasized the word from the beginning. It was very much our focus that this will be the same quality. Quality and scale often said cannot go hand in hand. We said that is our challenge. We want to take the same quality and scale it up fast. And to do that, the most important feature of the EFA is not any grand talk. We didn't want to build new schools everywhere. We didn't want to create different things. We said we will identify and network and find out those people that we have heard this morning were already dedicated, were already doing selflessly to promote education to the remotest of the corner against all odds. Our job was to bring that quality, to empower them, to give them the honor, give them the value, give them the encouragement that this is possible. And we are seeing that happen. It's the same people. We have not created them. They were there. So after we have done that, the report says we have done a wonderful job, things are progressing, and we haven't done it. When I say we means you all together. Without that possible. So that has happened in the second phase. After we have completed in the first 6-7 months with almost more than 500 teachers, more than 150 schools and institutions, impacting more than 20,000 students, our program didn't stop there. We went to Ladakh. This morning you heard a presentation from there where government schools, many government schools, 60 government schools, 12 private schools participated and we took the program there. We went to North Bengal where, of course, with the Association of West Bengal Police and the civic volunteers, we have entered the remotest tea gardens. More than 100 tea gardens, teachers have been trained and they're fast implementing this. These are really amazing stories. I would not believe that if anybody would have told me a year ago that it would be possible this fast that we could almost train more than 1,000 teachers and more than 50,000 students to be impacted through this process. Things are happening. And this journey will continue, making me every day very humble. It's a journey for myself as well, both internally and externally. It's really amazing to recognize how fast things are happening. And above all, EFA is a journey of knowing, connecting, trusting, integrating people. The wonderful people at the grassroots who are making the difference. That's Nanritam is all about. অন্ধকারের উৎস হতে উৎসারিত আলো সেই তো তোমার আলো সকল দ্বন্দ্ব বিরোধ মাঝে সেই যে ভালো সেই তো তোমার ভালো. Nothing more than that. That's all it is. That it summarizes what this program is. With that, I will hand over the book. But before that, let me say a couple of words about how we would progress. Our next phase is we are trying to, of course, spread with this literacy numeracy foundation EFA that we already have. We are spreading it. We are bringing more schools into that program. We're spreading to other parts. At the same time, we are also bringing up to new programs within the EFA programs that will cover the even foundation in science from 5 to 8. At the same time, we are bringing some, we could say, conversational English and other things in the program. So the program is spreading both in access, both axes. It is ready. At the same time, we are bringing new content. And I know most of you are going to stay in that journey with us, and we will progress together. At the end, as I said, The most important part of the EFA is our you all, the network of wonderful teachers, the grassroots teachers who are making a difference. We could not do it alone. And in that journey, all of you have contributed significantly. All of your contributions every day, your dedications and all made the difference possible. Till within that journey, we have recognized a few clusters of schools, few individual institutes, and few individuals who probably were even within those extraordinary team, even more extraordinary, whose lessons, whose learning, whose teaching needs to be applauded even more within the EFF family. It is not about just saying they are better, others are not. It is essentially highlighting the spirit that what is possible when we all put ourselves together. In that word, impossible is nothing. So I will just call out a few recognitions that we have from the EFA point of view. We have decided. I would say we would not, due to the time shortage and all, we would not be able to ask them to come to the stage. I will just announce their name and kind of reward we have been with a very humble effort we were able to do from the EFA side. You just please stand up so that others can see you and can even get inspired by your effort. I have here Taposh Goswami from Hijoldia Krishna Committee. From their cluster, we have almost 19 schools from the same cluster. So he will be the representative on their behalf that we're recognizing for the entire cluster. And from EFA side, we will reward you with a some kind of with a TV that is actually you can utilize for smart TV that you can utilize for your education purposes, projecting, connecting, all kind of even your clusters to different kind of training that we do, or broadcast our training, become our cluster partner even strongly that needs to be done. We are also recognizing Shipra Das Maiti from our Kishalai Foundation of Sundarban, also on to your cluster as a wonderful work done. We are also recognizing you with a token donation there from our side in EFA, another smart TV that will help your clusters within your clusters to spread the EFA knowledge and other educational effort effectively. We are recognizing Nishit Bhushan Mahato from Panchmukhi Vivekananda Vidya Mandir in Jambal. Yes, he was there. Would be for that institution again for their wonderful work. Would be recognizing them with the tab that will also helpful for spreading and working well with the all education related efforts. Manohar Mahato, I know Manohar is there again. Manohar Mahato is another very important column of this EFA network spreading and holding EFA together. So we also recognize Manohar Babu's school with the tab, also again to help spreading the education effectively. Then we are also recognizing Manik Singh, is also from the Katiyam Community Learning Center, Ranibagh, Bankura. Again, Manik Babu is also representing a bigger cluster, which is Shabor Keria Community Cluster, but his institution is also doing a great job, so we're also recognizing them. So different clusters and different institutions, we do have this different types of recognize essentially to encourage all of us together to work with what's possible. Let's keep doing. Beside that, We also have person like Mr. Amitabh Misra. Amitabh Babu was one of the, I would say, beginners when the EFA program started. Amitabh Babu took and later also took a tremendous effort from the government school side to make sure under the COVID situation, like other private schools and learning centers joined, Amitabh Babu also joined from the government school side and stayed with us to move on. We are recognizing Amitabh Babu as a government school. We are recognizing and we will contribute up to 100 books to your library for the Children's Learning Festival and Reading Festival. Similarly, we are also recognizing Anupam Bandapadhyay, also from the government school sector. Anupam, like Amitabh Babu, is always with us. He's a close friend of Nanritam through different Will Science program and others. We're also recognizing Anupam School with a set of 100 books to start and contribute to the library to promote reading. Last but not least, we have Mr. Subrata Naskar. Also, we are recognizing Subrata's institution with 100 books to put to the library on that side. Beside that, the very last, we are also recognizing Mr. Uma Shankar Mukherjee for his schools. There we will contribute the EFA books for this year, literacy and numeracy, the maths and English book. We will be contributing that from EFA side to your school. And then, as this journey is progressing, many ways we are progressing. We're also recognizing and seeing leaders coming off the grassroots who are not only doing within their own school, but also becoming leaders to spread and take it to help us to spread the program. We are recognizing a few teachers from the grassroots as an associate teachers who would be helping as the EFA programs is progressing in the different parts of the country on the state. They will be helping us while helping their own schools and clusters. They'll be also helping us. We have Manas Hait from Agroduk Shishu Shiksha Mandir, Ms. Lakshmi Tudu, Lakshmi. Also, Lakshmi will be one of our associate teachers helping us to spread it to other areas besides their own institute. Piali Shinha from Nivedita Mission School, Kolkata. Ananda Majumdar, also from Nivedita Mission School, Kolkata. Subrata Naskar from Rotary Vivekananda School and Skill Development Center as well. So with that, I'm just whatever little I had to say didn't remain little, it became longer than I thought. But nevertheless, I again, really from the heart, I thank you. This experience was heartening. This yes, I'll hand over the books, and then Kaushik will take over and address the audience here, as well as a lot of people are waiting on the online to hear from him.
I know the whole gathering here is waiting for Kaushik, but being a mother of Felix School of Education, or maybe a grandmother, whatever it is, I would love my Anushi to come up on the request of Prashanta sir and Ranjana ma'am to speak on the and to narrate the poem she said and got the runners up in the international world storytelling. Please, Anushi, come. Just a minute. Come in.
So as I said, we did a third-party independent survey about the EFA impact, how the EFA program, the system, the process, the books, the teaching methodology, as well as how the impact really happened at the grassroots, at the student level, how far they have improved. Results are excellent, as I said. So that report is published. I'm just officially, formally, kind of starting that, giving that to Kaushika's hand. After that, we will share that with our stakeholders as would be needed. Kaushika. And the organization that has done it is C. Drasta, an independent organization who does this kind of development study at the grassroots. We're really also grateful to them.
So before we hear Professor Basu, Here I am, the proud teacher of Anushi Nigar from our school, Phillips School of Education, grade 10. So Anushi's achievement is no mean feat. So she has competed with almost 59,000 children across the globe, coming from 127 countries. 137 countries. She first qualified among the top 71 and she has won the first runners up prize. And the story she has narrated is in the form of a poetry which she has written herself. Her theme was culture and little details which others might not know. She wrote it during her pre-boards. She is a CBSE candidate this year. So her pre-board examination was going on and she wrote it in the little weekend that was there in between two exams. And she has done a stupendous job. So let us hear Anushi read her poem. It's called Culture.
We have 6 finalists. Yeah.
So Anushi has won the second prize, but there were 6 children from our school who went to the top 71. So three from the junior section, Alia Mahmood, Aniki Khan, Pranay Haldar from the junior section, Riddhi Sengupto, Shweta Shorkar and Anushi from the senior section. And all of them, the competition was really tough. The standard was international and they competed really well and each of them made us proud. So let us hear Anushi read her poem.
Good afternoon to all. I am Anushi Nigar from grade 10. And first of all, I am grateful to my school for giving me such an opportunity. I am highly thankful to Ranjana ma'am, Bharti ma'am, and our principal ma'am, and of course Priyanka ma'am for supporting me throughout. I also thank all my teachers and fellow friends for their constant support. Here is the poem that I wrote one night before the competition, which is on based on culture, where a day and a night alike are bright, where the hustling cities rest between the folk stories, where the sun sets, but no sooner the oil lamps light up. Colors of love you find on empty whites. An ambitious good number of youth dwell here to reach great heights. Such a culture is where I belong to, such a land rare in a few. The rain here stops by windows, driven by the smell of freshly fried fritters. The winter round a burning fire lights up bangles and distinct attires. As crowns my men adorn turbans, while my women archers. Clad in kurtas and saris, be it the Punjabis, the Tamils, or the Biharis. From paper mache of Jammu to sunrises and sunsets of Kanyakumari, every corner of my world bears a different story. Each flower here blooms to the carols of Christmas, the warmth of Eid, or in the glory of Ma Kali. I arise as a Bengali. Solely and proudly, I am an Indian. Thank you all.
So we have been waiting for a long time. So now, may I please request Professor Basu to address the gathering.
Thank you very much. Everybody, let me begin by Anushi, congratulations. Not just for winning the prize, but it's, first of all, beautifully written, lyrically written, and with a wonderful message, a message that is really needed today. So congratulations. Yeah. Let me, Prashant Das here, Ranjana, Bharati, Ruma, Rana, Priyanka, visitors from all over who have come. I, the morning session, I was just mesmerized listening to you all from remote parts. Some of the places I have visited, but many of them I have not. And I have to say, I took note of the places I have not been to, so they are now on my list of places to visit. I do want to talk to you about education, the deficiencies, the gaps that have arisen, and what we need to do about it. Just on a personal note, since there's so much good work going on here, during the 2 years, 2.5 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, I normally come to India several times every year, but it was 2.5 years of absence from India. I came back and it was a very heartrending event for me. My mother-in-law, wife's mother, lived in Delhi, and there was a woman who used to work for her, help her with the cooking and all that. My mother-in-law used to live alone. When I came back after 2.5 years, I asked her, called this person, very sweet woman, what was your daughter doing during the 2.5 years? The daughter was 8 or 9 years old and was supposed to be joining class digitally, but they had nothing for a digital connection. It was a small phone, cracking up, seeing little images which would vanish. So it was basically from a well-intentioned human being really wanting to get into life, 2.5 years of just darkness imposed on them through nothing. And the COVID-19, yes, we can say it was out of our hand, but this is the kind of thing that we need to reach out to so that this kind of darkness will not descend on anyone. And my association here with the Felix School is very, very special for that reason, that it is attending to a need which is very germane to Indian society and to the world. I mean, our concern should be broader. Anyone, anywhere suffering, we want to reach out to, but we are limited. So we start with our land, our nation, but the idea is to reach out to anywhere. Therefore, I also have to say that the model of education for all, which tries to take this model and then spread it out, because beyond the point, there is a great limit to what you can do in one school. But if you begin to take the essential lessons of that and then spread it out, you can have a larger and larger impact through that. And that is the reason why the Felix School and the EFA, and now hearing about the prizes being won, which does take you by surprise. Big schools in Kolkata, Delhi, Mumbai, even abroad, rarely gets a little bit of recognition. But to have something, when I tell my friends in America that a school in Purulia district, there are 6 people who had this recognition, one person was a first runner-up, they get taken aback. They can't believe. So it's an amazing achievement. I also have to say that I never got to meet Swami Lokesharanandaji. To me, he's a figure, an inspirational figure that I used to hear about from my childhood. The Ramakrishna mission was very close. We used to go, and there was Bharat Maharaj. We would meet every year. That was by several times. When I was in Kolkata, we would meet, but never got to meet Lokesharanandaji. But I gather that he was an inspirational force behind a lot of what is happening. One word association, these are trivial associations, but somehow mean a lot to me. I should tell you that deep down, I am a skeptic. I am full of doubts. So I'll be dishonest if I did not admit to that. But I'm aware that there is much more to life than we, with our limited human minds, can grasp. I grew up in Modern Mitro Lane in North Calcutta, very close to Shimle Street. And my mother would take us there. That narrow lane could have been anywhere, where Swami Vivekananda, associated with Swami Vivekananda. These are huge influences. I do not fully understand, We are mystified about the world, but these have been very, very big influences for me. So that's also an association which I cherish. But I wanted to begin by telling you with a slightly funny first association I had with Ramakrishna Mission, Rohora, the school in Rohora you probably know about. I had just finished my PhD. A student, basically, finished my PhD 1977. I had come to Kolkata. My mother said that you have to begin by giving a lecture in Rohora. They, of course, had no idea who I was. My mother phoned. My mother was quite aggressive about these things. Spoke with the principal and said, my son has done a brilliant PhD. My mother had no idea what kind of a PhD I had done, but described it as a brilliant PhD. He will come and talk. The principal invited us. My mother and I went. In the beginning, we had tea, coffee, chatted with the principal. Then we were taken to a big class like that. Lots of students, young students, rowdy students, they were made to sit down. And my mother came and sat in the front row, and the principal started introducing me. I had just finished my studies. He kept saying, I'm a famous economist. I was feeling uncomfortable, but I realized what's happening. With my mother staring at him, he had no choice but to describe me as a famous economist because my mother was keeping watch on what he is saying about me. But then something mysterious happened. He kept talking about my achievements, my papers, and I was wondering why is he going on for so long. Then I realized what had happened. He had forgotten who I was, my name. So after describing me as a famous economist, he turned to me and said, excuse me, sir, what is your name? And that really shook me up. It was very difficult to give a proper lecture after that. And even those children roared out with laughter. They realized that it was meaningless what he was saying about me. But it was nevertheless a lovely association, and an association that has continued for a very long time. I want to get to education, but I want to also start out with a broader problem. The world is in a very difficult spot. I have to say, when I look around people, my friends, my relatives, I feel happy. All are reasonably fine. But you stare at the larger world, and there is reason to feel depressed. It seldom happens that you listen to the evening news, seeing people dying in Ukraine who have nothing to do with politics, being mowed down because there is a war taking place, to see the COVID coming, people locking down, and this we cannot get away from. For young people, this is a period of huge psychological stress. I teach at Cornell University. Every few days, messages will come from Cornell's health department that please be sensitive to the fact that there are students who are caught in America who can't go back. They are very troubled by the kind of very strange environment in which we are living. I feel that Prof referred to this, that the COVID-19 is a jolt, but there were many things going wrong. And this is a good time to take stock of what was going wrong in the world and try to make amends for it. I am a very mainstream economist. I mean, I do my little bits of mathematical model building, little bits of analysis, trying to understand the world as well as possible. And I will, through some examples in education, try to impress upon you that this is a domain where it's a complex matter, but we want to try and bring simple understanding as much as possible. Researchers very often love complications for the sake of complications. You must not get into that. You have to put your mind to it, focus on things, but very often the deepest truths are the simplest truths. One example I was not planning to give, but I have to give you. You know, Euclid, the famous geometrician who wrote down his geometry, was making one assumption in his head, which he was also not aware of. His geometry was meant for a plane, for a flat surface, which means Euclidean geometry does not strictly apply to the earth, which is spherical. One of the first persons who realized this had nothing to do with that kind of geometry, that kind of mathematics. That was Omar Khayyam. He sensed that Euclid had made an implicit assumption without being aware. Then, in the 19th century, a German lawyer, nothing to do with geometry, Very often the deepest insights come from an outsider. Carl Ferdinand Schweikart realized there was an implicit assumption in geometry. He went and talked to a famous mathematician, Gauss, and non-Euclidean geometry was born. So very often it is the outsider's simplicity you need to understand the world. I must give you a trivial example, but I must give you. There's a story. This is a story of Sherlock Holmes. We all read about Sherlock Holmes. I'm sure it was made up later. Sherlock Holmes and Watson were going on some detective expedition across an open area somewhere in England. It was getting dark. So Sherlock Holmes turned to Watson and said, Watson, let us pitch a tent and sleep under the tent and we'll go again in the morning. So in the middle of the open space, they pitched their tent, went off to sleep. Middle of the night, Sherlock Holmes woke up Watson, said, Watson, open your eyes, look, and say, what can you deduce? Sherlock Holmes was known for his deduction. Watson opened his eyes and saw a sky full of stars. In London, with the cloud and the smoke and smog, you never see that kind of stars, whereas in the open field, you could see the stars. And Watson said, well, I deduce from the fact that there are so many stars, I deduce that there must be similar planetary systems like the one in which we live. Then he went on to say, and if there are many planetary systems like the one we have, I deduce that there are also some planets which are like the Earth. If there are some planets which are like the Earth, I deduce that there must be life out there on those planets. By then, Sherlock Holmes was very irritated. Sherlock Holmes pushed him and said, no, Watson, there is only one thing to deduce. Someone has stolen our tent. The fact that you can see the open sky, that was a simple deduction Sherlock Holmes was pushing towards, and Watson went off in a complicated direction. Trivial story, but it is the story of trying to bring a simple view on Earth. The changing world and the need for education. The change, I feel, usually when you get a big technological advance, if you manage to negotiate that advance successfully, you come out of it better off. But a big technological advance can change the world. And now, the digital advance, which is going on for the last 40, 50 years, is changing the landscape. One particular thing which is changing, I'm not using PowerPoint, but I have it with me, I could have shown you. Very simple economics. If you look at a nation's national income, total income in the nation, and the share of that income that goes to workers as wages. So do you get it? You take the whole nation's total income and the share that goes as wages. If you look at all rich countries, upper middle income countries, all reasonably well-off countries, over the last 50 years, the proportion of the national income going to workers is falling in a way we've never seen before. And you can understand what's happening. It is machines are taking over more and more mechanical work. The biggest problem is not in emerging economies and developing economies. The biggest problem is in advanced economies for the simple reason that unlike in the Industrial Revolution where you are getting new machines, now you're getting one kind of a machine which links up workers sitting far away. So American workers are suffering doubly. Machines are replacing some of their work, and people sitting in Bangalore or Manila or Cape Town who are beginning to work are displacing some of their workers. This is leading to a political polarization and trouble as the share of the workers is going down. Usually in political debates, this will be pointed out that the challenge is between the workers of United States and the workers in poor countries. What is not mentioned often, though there are people who are pointing out, every time work is sent out, profit shoots up in America. So there is a tension between profit and wages of American workers, which the attention is not being drawn. But the upshot is the technological advance you can do nothing about. And I believe in the end, it is a part of life you have to live with. The key to handling this modern world is education. And my own belief is usually when you go into a period of big technological change, at the end of it, there are new winners and losers. After this digital revolution, the COVID Ukraine war, I believe over the next 20, 30 years, you will see some countries coming up from behind and shooting right onto the top, some up there beginning to go down. There will be big changes. And my belief is the crucial winner will be countries that are investing in education and modern education. The mind has to be open to the fact that it's a complex world. Yes, we want all the beauty of literature, all the beauty of spiritual learning. We also want the hard sciences to be learned, mathematics to be learned, because that is needed for the modern world that we will negotiate. I'll give you one historical example which fascinates me. You know, I now live in the United States. If you read the literature, about 100 years ago, say maybe a little bit more than 100 years ago, before the start of First World War, so 1914, 15, one country that was doing very well, it had grown very rapidly, Argentina. And there was a lot of writing even in the United States that Argentina is already among the top 10 richest countries. It will overtake United States, all other countries, and move ahead and be one of the richest countries in the world. Over the next 30 years, history turned out to be very, very different. Argentina stagnated completely. United States did take off and became very wealthy. What happened? There's a lot of analysis. And you know, people like to think of the military power and all that. I do think that played a role, but to me, that's not the essence of what caused United States to take off. And there is a lot of analysis on this. This is not my research. There are probably two things that happened. Argentina went through a phase of what is very often called hyper-nationalism. Hyper-nationalism is not loving just your nation, but it's almost a hatred of other nations. And there should be no space for that. A human being suffering here or a human being suffering in Africa is a human being suffering. Argentina did go through, and you can even see in economic policies, it was a very, that closed door, rest of the world doesn't matter, it's our internal focus and nothing else. I think that was doing some damage, but the other one is probably deeper. United States, for right reason or wrong, whether they realized, I don't think they realized the importance of it, invested in education in a way that very few countries were doing. The American universities began sprouting up. Education was spreading all over, and modern education, and also people fleeing other nations. Germany under Hitler, people running away from Germany. A lot of them were coming into the United States. And the nurturing of education of all kinds is believed is what got America growing after that, probably the most fundamental driver. Once, about 15 years ago, when I used to be an advisor to the Indian government, I remember going to China, to Xiamen, and one of the Chinese journalists came and asked me a little bit of envy for India, saying that, "Sir, can you tell me what is the secret of soft power? China is the country of hard power, machines, guns, etc. Whereas she was talking about India's soft power, the cultural power, the culture that the poem that we just heard. What is the secret of that? Because in the long run, culture takes greater time, but it does influence us. And if you look back at history, it also fascinates me that countries which have prospered, it's almost invariably with side by side, with great progress in the human mind and thought. From Greece, Alexander spreading out. But before Alexander, for about 100 years, 150 years, there is Socrates, there is Plato, there is Pythagoras. It's ideas. The world of ideas are just spreading in Greece, and then Greece becomes a prosperous nation. If you think of Italy, Italy during the period of the great enlightenment that was taking place, and its economy was beginning to flourish, 15th century, 16th century. It's also the period of some of the greatest philosophers. Machiavelli, who in India, Machiavelli's ideas were already there, a lot of it in the writings of Kaushik and Chanakya, but Machiavelli is there. Art, Leonardo da Vinci, art, culture is flourishing, and then the economy begins to flourish as well. England is a good example as well. England and Britain flourishes. We must not forget that the big role that was being played by the university system, by the school system, modern education coming in, and I feel United States picked that up. You can come to contemporary times. South Korea I find fascinating, because if you go to 1950s, 60s, just after the North-South break takes place, South Korea, under the rule of Park Chung-hee, is an authoritarian country. Hyperinflation, hyperinflation is too strong, but very high inflation, 20-25% per annum. It's a very, very troubled country. And I remember, I have written actually a full paper comparing India and South Korea, that in the early 1960s, there are American documents saying that India is going to take off, but South Korea is probably going to stagnate. But they got that wrong. What made South Korea progress like this? Well, we have a few interesting data. When it comes to intellectual property or patents being taken out, South Korea is among the world's top 2-3 countries per capita. Huge amount of intellectual activity going on. In South Korea, school teachers, some of them, the best known teachers, are treated like rock stars, that they are celebrities. And you can see some of the benefits, and this is the reason why the COVID period is very important to us. Once there is damage done to education for a certain period of time, the damage is much deeper than people realize. If the teaching is interrupted for whatever the reason, pandemic or bad policy decision, for 10 years your teaching is not up to the mark, you don't even get the next round of teachers being produced. Your EFA philosophy that you have to get the teachers pulled in. If you don't have the next round of teachers being produced, then 20 years later, 25 years later, the next round of students are not getting good education. And it goes cascading down. Two of my students, Patrick Emerson and Andre Portela Souza. Patrick is American and Andre is from Brazil. They have done these beautiful studies to show that once a household gets hit badly in terms of poverty and can't get enough education, that lasts multiple generations, because the children don't get educated, their children don't get educated, and it just lasts over a period of time. I think the big investment in education in South Korea was the primary driver, and we do know that South Korea is expected to overtake Japan in terms of per capita income any day now. Around now, by some measures, it has overtaken, by some other measures, it will. And this was unimaginable 30, 40 years ago, and I think the main driver is education. I have many things to talk about, but let me just say a bit of a research topic on education that I did with a co-author called James Foster. James Foster is an American economist, happens to be married to an Indian, so comes to Kerala a lot. James and I did this study. This is just a kind of idea which is possible for you all to track as well. I'm forgetting, don't hold me on the exact numbers, I'm just giving from memory. Around 1961, say India's literacy rate is 35%. I may be plus or minus some, but that's not important. I'll give you the logic of this. What struck us when we were looking at the Indian data is you can have two countries, both with 35% literacy rate, but where the effect would be very different if the following was true. If in one country, 35% of people are illiterate, but 35% of the households are illiterate. And 35% are literate, 65% are illiterate households. You can have another society where the overall percentage is the same, but within every household, there are 2 literate people, 3, 4 illiterate people. So do you get it? The percentage for the nation is the same. In one country, households are fully illiterate, some households are fully literate. In another country, the literates are spread across households, same overall percentage. We suspected that the country where it's divided totally, some households are completely illiterate, some fully literate, will be worse off because the fully illiterate households are living in complete darkness. They don't have a window. So even if your literacy rate is very low, if the literates are spread across households, it's almost like having a computer and digital connection for information. Any information you need, you go to the literate person and say, there is this medicine, can you read up and tell me what the instruction is? Then we applied this to Bangladesh with some data, and we saw the external benefits of a literate person can be just huge. You don't have to be literate, but if you have access to a literate person, you're getting a huge amount of benefit. Then you immediately realize that literacy is important, but distribution, if just a few people, households are fully literate and the rest are fully illiterate, it's a devastating situation for society. You do want distribution to be better. Distribution, I must say that the topic gets political, but inequality beyond a point is intolerable. This is something that we have to put our minds to, because again, these are the kinds of challenges where just being an activist is not good enough. You can't damage the functioning of a society. There's a lot of design involved. I want to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about the broader concerns that I touched on in the morning when I was briefly talking to you. We in economics talk in terms of progress, growth, in terms of people's entrepreneurial capacity, in terms of people's profit motive. In economics, the motive to get more profit is treated as a positive, and yes, it drives people. What we don't talk about, but if you do proper analysis is important, is things like morals, norms. These things, if a society does not have, just by this craving to do better for yourself, a society can't function well. There are beautiful studies. There are cross-country studies. One is by Francis Fukuyama. Fukuyama talks about trust. If people have trust among themselves, that society does much better. And Fukuyama gave the example of Scandinavia, Nordic countries, Sweden, Denmark, Norway. These countries have a lot of trust. And these countries have flourished very well. But it's not because there is something special about the Swedes and North. I basically believe, which is a view that goes back to Rabindranath Tagore, emphasizing that fundamentally we human beings are the same. No matter what your religion, what caste, what race, just go back. You don't have to go too far back. We come from the same genetic pool. So we are basically very, very similar people with different experiences. And if we can train our minds to acquire certain norms, those societies begin to do better. Again, East Asia, the trust norms were not like that always. They began to develop, and once the trust norms had developed, those societies began to flourish. Japan, Korea, Taiwan, these were societies which were doing very well, and if you look at trust among people, it's very, very high. There are laboratory tests done. There were these very famous tests done in Israel, that if you bring a group of people in a laboratory who have a lot of trust, and there you mimic an economy, people who have trust among themselves, they begin to do better in the lab. In India, there is one indicator which is partly education, partly other things, which is capital and investment. Let me explain this to you a little bit. If you take the nation's full income Every other income that comes out, we economists break it up into two parts. One part is consumption goods that you're going to eat up. Even not just eat up meaning literally, but things you'll buy, clothes, food, a joyride. These are consumption, we are consuming them. But there is also investment, roads, bridges. Human capital is a part of investment. The amount of money being spent to build human capital. If you look at the investment rate, India's investment rate, India was historically a low investing country. Then the investment rate started rising. In 2009, it reached a peak. 39% of the national income was being invested. Human capital, roads, bridges, ports, investment. After that, it's from 2010, it's begun declining. From 39%, it's now down to about 32%. People are a bit mystified. Why is investment going down? Why are people not investing enough? We don't understand this fully because investment is not just a question of economic policy. Human capital is much more than economic policy. What is it? People believe that to invest, you need trust to be able to invest. And I do think that our society is becoming so divisive, so polarized, so much of hatred, that it is eroding trust and cohesion in society. And that is beginning to do damage to us. We have to try to reclaim that. And once again, in a setting like this, in Purulia, in Felix School, when I see people coming together on a joint project, the project itself is crucial. Education. But more than that, it's this collective effort. It's the trust that you sense. We were using the word over lunch. The speech that you gave. There was an antorikota to the speech. That is this. You can't quite define, you can't quite measure, but there are studies saying that makes a difference. So let me just close. I will be happy to take questions if you want after this, if there is time for that. Two things I'm reminded. Actually, let me stress three things. After this period of the digital revolution, when it ends, I'm taking you into a bit of economics, but let me do that. 5-10 minute আরো Okay. তাহলে আমি আরেকটু elaborate করছি on one more thing. Growth. 1 year, you're better off than the previous year. You know, I don't know if you have any idea what global growth right now is. Right now, it's dropped because of all these troubles. Global growth is about 2% per annum. The global income is increasing 2% per annum. But normally, if you look at the last 40 years, global growth would be about 3% per annum. So every year, the world is becoming 3% richer than the previous year. Usually, the growth rate goes up after a major technological revolution. If you look at the Industrial Revolution, the famous thing that we talk about, from 1750 to 1850, before that, global growth used to be 0.3%. It went up much more. There was a lot of trouble. After that, it went up much more. It is possible that India and the whole world will now, after the digital revolution gradually settles down and we solve many of the problems, we will begin to grow much faster. But there is a question here. If growth is conventional growth, is it possible for us to survive? We will damage the environment. If we are going to grow by producing just more cars, more luxury items, more planes to fly across the sky, we will probably damage the environment. So what will growth consist of if we are growing much faster? Growth is anything that we value. The way economists define the national income is anything that you value. My belief is the two sectors which will grow if we come out of this difficult time well. One is going to be the education sector. One big reason for that is the nature of education will be changing dramatically. A lot of the mechanical work will be taken away by computers. They will begin to do that for you. Human beings will be left to do creative work. That will be our domain. And that sector, creative education, where the mind is being opened up, is going to be very important. Countries which invest in that will do well. Countries that don't invest in that will probably begin to stagger. The other sector, I believe, is health. That's my belief, not sure, that The investment in the health sector is going to go up, and the scope for breakthroughs in health are huge. We can live longer, our pain can be conquered from variety of ailments, from cancer to Alzheimer's. There's scope for breakthroughs and huge breakthroughs. As the human mind, and these two are very correlated, gets into creative education, doing more research, we will get newer forms of cures for ailments. Our longevity will probably increase. So the GDP growth, if we come out of this troubled times well, the GDP growth will probably be much higher, but the content of what is national income will probably change quite a bit. I feel a disproportionate amount of it will be education, creative education, where we are developing our mind. And here, right from science to literature to poetry, education is the creative cells in the brain opening up, will play a big role. Health sector will play a big role. Nations that get into this from now, invest in this, can go very far. Nations that don't will probably stall and do badly. And we know from previous cases that countries that were doing very well, surging ahead, suddenly began to slow down. And other countries which were staggering along began to do better and began to flourish. So we have to put our mind to it, and we have to also remember that what I said earlier, that economic growth is not just driven by economic factors. Our morals are important. This must not be left just to be taught in schools and in missionary classes or in temples or in masjids. Just the plain basic human morals of honesty, integrity are the foundations of growth and progress. Kenneth Arrow, one of the greatest economists of the last 100 years, Kenneth Arrow, who proved these very beautiful theorems mathematically very hard about the profit motive and growth. In a lovely essay in 1973, he says that all these things that we economists talk about, and he's one of the gurus of the field, profit motive, entrepreneurship, all these things will come to nothing if we do not have these basic values of trust, integrity, honesty between people, kindness, compassion. It's a very beautiful short essay, and most people say that Arrow is going off topic, but Kenneth Arrow, whom I actually got to know him in his last years, he lived till the age of 94. I got to know him after the age of 91, 92, was a person with breathtaking contribution to economics, but also a realization that ultimately the economy is situated on this bedrock of basic values of kindness, compassion, integrity. And if those things begin to erode, society is going to crumble. So thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to talk. I will, of course, in classes be talking about much more specific topics later on. Thank you very much.
এই মাইক্রোফোনটাকে একটু তুলে দিতে সে আছে
অতটা একটু মাইক্রোফোন তুলে দিতে হবে
আর এটা কর্ডলেসটা গোবিন্দ কর্ডলেসটা নাও পাচ্ছো যে বলবে পাচ্ছো মিনালো দেখো পাচ্ছো ওখানে রাখো যে বলবে তাকে দেবে গ্রাফ পাচ্ছো না yes yes I won't say a thank you because we don't want it to end. It's open to the house. I would request the guests here, if they have any questions, to kindly ask. Yes, Govinda, please.
And Bangla, English, Hindi, all fine. Don't test my language skills by going to too many languages, but 3-4 I can handle.
That you spoke in your talk human capital, but it is not taken care in your GDP. In the GDP of any country, you have to take care. Even in the industries, it is not spoken about by HR people, by economists, but they also do not quantify. How do we measure this statistics, human capital?
I just want to clarify. Yeah, I don't think it's picking up. I'm done.
না এটা কাজ করছে না।
হ্যাঁ, হঠাৎ কাজ করছে। Can you hear, or is there a book? There's a bit of a
No, it's better.
vibration.
It's better.
Okay. So, human capital is taken into account in GDP. There are difficulties of how we take into account, but not that it is not taken account at all. So when we are looking at different forms of capital, you're investing in bridges and other things, we do take into account the human capital. The trouble is, where your question becomes very relevant, it's very hard to measure. A bridge or a port you can immediately value, whereas the acquisition of human capital is very, very difficult to measure. So whenever GDP is being calculated, we do take that into account, but there are lots of questions. Did you use the right measures, the right prices to value the acquisition of knowledge? So it's very troubled part of the GDP, but not that it is ignored, that we won't even look at that.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, please? Govinda, there's another question, please. There.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful speech. I have learned a lot, and at the same time, I'm quite confused. As a teacher, my simple question is, you spoke about honesty and integrity. These are two Greek words in today's society. So we depend on the family culture, the parents and the family culture. But how much do we depend on schools and teachers and the school setup? Particularly, I'm speaking about private schools, higher schools, and also the government schools, not schools like FELEX. Government schools teachers are not in class and they are sick paid. They do some other works. Their learnings are not used in schools. And we know that most of the children in India are in government schools. So is there any way of handling that? I'm not sure. Maybe through textbooks for the teacher. I'm not sure. Any lights on that? Thank you.
Obviously, think about honesty and integrity. First of all, it is a complicated subject. We can't simplify and say that it always helps you directly. There are times when being honest means you have to make personal sacrifices by virtue of, and that people should be clear. If honesty always led to doing better in life, then honesty is like investment in a bank or in a stock market, but it's not that. And we also have historical examples from some primitive peoples, this is well recorded, who had a lot of honesty among themselves. But when outside forces come, from the colonial powers to even domestic businesses going to these very, very so-called backward areas where people have a lot of trust and honesty among themselves, in the end they get exploited. That very trait, which is a good trait, it becomes a form of a source of exploitation from outside. So it is a complicated topic, but I feel on the whole, in a society, if you can nurture this, it is crucial. And it's not just a woolly idea. I'll give you a bit of a concrete example. Is for an economy to do well, it's about trade and exchange. I'm buying something, I'm giving you money, you do something for me, I'm investing, you build a house, I give you money, you build a house for me. Beyond a point, you can't have these things enforced by the law. When I take money from a bank, yes, we sign a contract. But when I give someone the money to paint my window, I give the money today and tell this person you paint it tomorrow. Or that person paints today and I say I'll pay you tomorrow. In between this today and tomorrow, there is trust. A society where after the person has painted the window, I say, no, I won't pay you. If that kind of trust is not there, then the painting jobs will stop. So if you think about the functioning of the economy, trust is like the hinges of a society. If that breaks down, so to that extent, you want it widespread, not just at home, parents teaching, though not all parents do teach that, parents should teach them, but it also has to be a part of school, part of culture, and we have to be realistic that if good morals is always to do better for yourself to go to heaven, then good morals is not morals. It's a cost-benefit analysis. You're doing it in order to go to heaven. Good models is where you're doing it, whether it's costly or not, because you just feel that that is hardwired into you. So there are important lessons here, important analysis, and we do want it to spread through. I like to believe that in settings like this, listening to the teachers, not just in the Felix School, but also teachers who've come from different places, that spirit is there. We are trying to build that up. And it's not because it's a risky route, others can exploit that. It is a bit dangerous. But East Asian trust that was being developed, in the long run, it has helped them enormously, and the countries have done well.
Yes, any more questions? Yes, yeah. Govinda Priyanka.
Thank you, sir, for the speech. So, in your speech, you mentioned twice or thrice when this digital revolution ends. So, can we foresee that in any way what the world will look like after this digital revolution ends? Can we, as teachers, students, prepare for it in any way?
There is no, it's a hard enough question that there is no clear answer. When a major technological revolution starts, the landscape of the world changes. Not just the industrial revolution. When human beings learned long distance travel, from Marco Polo to Vasco da Gama, people are traveling over great distances which earlier they did not have the capacity. That changed the landscape of the world. The discovery of the Americas, discovery of India, Indonesia by Europe. And that led to a lot of exploitation. That's the start of colonial exploitation when these forces spread out. So exactly what form as the digital technology, who will, in case the technology gets captured, there's one major technology that one country captures. That's going to be one kind of a landscape. Another one will create another. So all we can do is put our minds together to think in terms of the best possible projections of what the future might look like. Another thing, Priyanka, this is not for us, this is at the global level. And since I do work with multilateral organizations, we have to think in terms of more and more international agreements. Just within a country or within a society, if you create rules, in this globally linked world, that will still cause lots of problems. There's one digital change, which I'll give you an example, which is now we are facing, no one anticipated. All of you are probably reading about supply chain links problems. In the olden days, a car is being produced in, say, Japan, or in India, or in America. The wheel, everything is being produced. Nowadays, that's not the way a car is produced. One part of the car is being produced entirely in China. The wheels, I don't know exactly what. Another part of the car is being produced in South Africa. You're putting it all together. These are called supply chains. There are these long chains through the world, and then the final product is coming out. During the COVID period, we realized what a deadly risky thing has developed. Because if one particular production stops, in the olden days, if cars are being produced in 100 countries, if one country stops producing cars, 1/100th of the car production stops. Some disruption, but we manage. But now, if the cars are being produced in 100 countries, but one country producing all the wheels, another country all the chips, another country all the chassis, if one country stops producing, the whole car industry comes to a halt. And we have felt that. As the chip industry in Taiwan was malfunctioning, the whole world's production was beginning to stagger. This is the supply chain problem. And I'm glad Priyanka asked this, something that we did not anticipate. Countries have realized that supply chain disruption can happen naturally, like the digital one, like the COVID period, but it is an instrument of war. If you don't like another country, you don't have to just send bombs and planes. Stop that one critical input and say, we won't supply this. You'll bring the whole world to a halt. We saw this now, that ships leaving with food out of Ukraine, which was crucial to Africa, suddenly not being able to leave is causing prices in Africa to rise because the supply chain gets. So the supply chains have become now instruments of war, and I think the power of this disruption of the global economy by stopping one critical item that you control is huge. The only way to get around this is contracts across countries, that certain instruments of war you can't use. It's like a nuclear non-proliferation treaty. Supply chains can't be used for warfare. Very, very difficult challenge. So it's not an easy world we are going into, and our only hope is the industrial revolution, the various machines for making textiles, clothing, which started in England, spread through the world. For the first 40, 50 years, the skies became dark. You can read it in English novels with pollution. Children as old as 10 years, 12 years, working for 14 hours a day. I was very interested in, this morning there was mention of child labor. I was very interested in child labor during the Industrial Revolution. And there are these interviews with children done in Britain, where the interviewer, a parliamentarian, is asking the child that working for 14 hours, could you remain standing all through the day? And because it's such a normal thing, there's no emotion. The child says, no, occasionally we fall down at the end of the day. It's a heartbreaking to hear that a child works to the point where you literally fall down by the end of the day, you're working so hard. So the Industrial Revolution started miserably. Then novel policies, labor laws, new labor laws coming into place saved us. We came out of it better off, world going into greater growth. Our technological revolution right now can bring us out into a much better world with new technology, but there are huge dangers that we will have to navigate.
So may I take the pleasure of asking a question? Now we have the national policy, education policy come up in India. Do you think that this would be like a balm to the learning deficiency? And do you think there should be a different budget for education to implement this in India?
Some of these policies are in the right spirit. NEP is that, Nipun, some of these are pushing us in directions where you're trying to make it inclusive. A historical point, India, if you go back to 1947, made one big mistake in education, long run mistake, one huge good decision in education. India was very good at higher education. The early IITs, soon after that IIMs. So India's higher education was absolutely world class. And we have got the benefits of that. The IT revolution that took place wouldn't have taken place without the IITs that had been formed much earlier, 1950s, 60s, the IITs are coming up. And I used to always say, when I used to teach in Delhi, you go to an international conference, as an American, as a European, you feel completely comfortable. All of your people all around. Only developing country from where you felt as comfortable, I used to feel, is India. There would be the Indians, you knew that the higher education Indians are coming out with as good education as the Americans and the Europeans, they were on par. But there was one deficiency, which has plagued us. We were very bad at giving education across the class. Our literacy rates were shockingly low. For 50, 60 years, even now, there are many sub-Saharan African countries with very little higher education, but they have overtaken India in terms of basic literacy. Effort now, and this effort we've made for 70 years, is once again to address that and get the education wider. So yes, it's one of the most important efforts, and I feel to make it concrete, we have a great record of saying we will do this for 70 years and not doing. So there should probably be budgetary allocation, so then your hands are tied, that it's not just a drafted plan, you've put money into that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Any other questions, please? Okay. Thank you. I would call our Secretary, Ma'am Ranjana, ma'am, to come up for the vote of thanks. It's just a formal ending of the program.
I don't think Kaushik needs any vote of thanks. He is one of us. It is very difficult to say, to give a vote of thanks to Kaushik and all of you. It's all of us as a team. It's a teamwork is going on. সকাল থেকে কৌশিক দা রয়েছেন, সকাল থেকে প্রশান্ত দা রয়েছেন। খুব ডিফিকাল্ট। ভোট অফ থ্যাঙ্কস ইজ আ ভেরি ফর্মাল থিং। এটা ফর্মাল অনুষ্ঠানই নয়। ফর্মাল অনুষ্ঠান হলে এই অনুষ্ঠানে কৌশিক দাকে পাওয়ার মতো ধৃষ্টতা আমাদের নেই, কিন্তু এটা আমাদের কখনোই মনে হয় না, মনে হয় কৌশিক দা আমাদেরই মানুষ। নানরিতামেরই হয়ে সকালে বলছিলেন যে নানরিতামের কথা বলতে গেলে ইমোশনাল লাগে। তো একটি কথা মানে এখানে যারা এসেছেন আমার বলার কথা, ফার্স্ট areas from Ladakh to Bihar, it's not very easy. We had been in Ladakh. It's not very easy to come all the way. They really don't know, and especially from the morning, Rinchen was listening Bengal. সহজ নয়। যে যেখানে যেটুকু নানরিতাম ছোট করে করছে, যে যেখানে যেটুকু কাজ করছে সেটা আপনাদের জন্য, আপনারা করতে পারছেন বলেই আমরা আছি। আপনারা না করতে পারলে আমরা সত্যি আমাদের কোনো কন্ট্রিবিউশন এখানে ছিল না। অনেক আমার বন্ধুরা রয়েছেন, শিক্ষিকারা রয়েছেন একদম গ্রাসরুটে, তাই বাংলায় বলছি, তো সেটা সম্ভবই ছিল না। আর যারা যেভাবে করেছেন, আসলে আমার মনে হচ্ছিল কিছু প্রশ্ন কন্ট্রোভার্সিয়াল হয়তো, কিন্তু আমার মনে হচ্ছিল মানুষ আসল কথা। কৌশিকদা ট্রাস্ট বলছিলেন, মিউচুয়াল ট্রাস্ট, রেসপেক্ট। মানুষ যে যেখানেই থাকুন না কেন, মানুষ খুব নিখাদ। আমি এখানে গল্প শুনেছি, ঘটনা, গল্প নয় ঘটনা। এখানে কোনো একটা সময় বন্যা হয়েছিল, স্বপনদা খুব বিখ্যাত মানুষ এখানকার, স্বপনদার কাছে শোনা। স্বপনদা বলেছিলেন বন্যা ত্রাণে রামকৃষ্ণ মিশন কাজ করছে, সকাল থেকে কাজ হচ্ছে, বিকেল বেলায় একজন এসছেন, বলছে তখন ক্লান্ত, আর পারছি না, ওই রিলিফের ওয়ার্ক করছে, আর পারছি না। তখন একজন বয়স্ক বৃদ্ধ দেখে মানে মনে হচ্ছে যে মানে একটু বিরক্তই হয়েছেন স্বপনদা বিরক্ত হয়ে বলেছেন, উমানন্দজিরা আছেন, এই প্রশান্ত দাদের সিনিয়ররা, লোকেশ্বরজি ছাত্র, তো উনি বলেছেন যে সকাল থেকে বন্যা ত্রাণ হচ্ছে, এত দেরি করে আসতে হয়, এখন তো কিছুই নেই, সব শেষ হয়ে গেল যে। তো সেই বৃদ্ধ, আমি বলতে পারবো না, স্বপনদা যেভাবে বলেন, সেই বৃদ্ধ স্বপনদার দিকে কাচুমাচু চোখ করে বলছেন, বাবা আমি নিতে আসিনি, আমি দিতে এসেছি বলে। তিনি ভিখারি, তিনি স্টেশনে ভিক্ষে করেন। তার ঝোলা থেকে একটা, স্বপনদা বলছেন, খুলে দিলেন, সমস্ত সিকি আধুলিতে ছড়িয়ে গেল আমাদের সামনেটা। উনি এই 1 মাস ধরে যা জোগাড় করেছেন, হয়তো খাননি, সেটা রেখেছেন এই রিলিফ ওয়ার্কে দেবেন বলে। সত্যি সত্যি গ্রাস রুটে প্রচুর মানুষ আজকে যারা উঠে দাঁড়িয়ে বলছিল, কিছু কিছু জায়গা দেখবার সৌভাগ্য হয়েছিল, ওই কিশালয় থেকে বলছিল সুন্দরবন, কি মানে কি কঠিন যাওয়া, যেতে গিয়ে পড়ে গেল ওদের মধুমিতারি। বর্ষায় আমরা গেছিলাম, আমি রানাদা জগন্নাথেরা গেছিলাম দেখতে, বা ওই যে আমাদের বাঁকুড়া জেলা থেকে যে দাঁড়িয়ে উঠে বললো, অ্যাবসলিউট জঙ্গল, সন্ধ্যেবেলায় 25টি মানুষকে নিয়ে পড়াচ্ছে, 25টি মানুষ বলছে ইংরেজিতে, একটু একটু করে বলছে। এটাই বড় পাওয়া। এটা করতে আমার মনে হয় সরকারি বেসরকারি সবাই এখানে যারা আছেন তাদের প্রত্যেকের ভূমিকা আছে। নানরিতমের ভূমিকা খুব কম, নানরিতমের যদি ভূমিকা আছে তারা কেউ এখানে দাঁড়িয়ে কথা বলেনি। তারা হচ্ছে পেছনে যেসব টিচাররা বসে আছেন, তনুশ্রী, প্রিয়াঙ্কা, সুস্মিতা, এদের কন্ট্রিবিউশন, কিন্ডারগার্টেন টিচার্স যারা এই কাজটা করেছে, অদিতি, অনেকের নাম বলতে ভুলে গেছে, তাদের হয়তো কষ্ট হচ্ছে, সেটা আমার উদ্দেশ্য নয়। উদ্দেশ্য হচ্ছে এখানে সরকারি শিক্ষকরাও আছেন। লাদাখের সরকারি স্কুল দেখছিলাম 3 দিন ধরে, কি অসীম উৎসাহ। ভারতীয় কিছু সায়েন্স এক্সপেরিমেন্ট দেখাচ্ছিল, ডান দিক থেকে, বা দিক থেকে, ওপর থেকে ওরা ভিডিও রেকর্ড করছিল। এখানেও তাই, এখানেও সরকারি স্কুলে হয়, এখানে আছেন সরকারি স্কুলের শিক্ষক প্রতিনিধিরা আছেন না, এখানে সরকারি মানুষটাই সব, যার প্রাণটা কাজে তারাই এগিয়ে এসে করছে, খুব সীমিত। এই যে আমরা নর্থ বেঙ্গলে পুলিশ ইনিশিয়েটিভ, অনেকদিন ধরে তো আছি নানরিতমের সঙ্গে, তার আগে মহারাজকে দেখেছি, এরকম পুলিশের ইনিশিয়েটিভ দেখিনি, একদমই দেখিনি। ওদের তো মেইন স্ট্রিমিং কাজ নয় এটা, কি বিপুল দক্ষতার সঙ্গে এই কাজটা করছেন, কি বিপুল দক্ষতার সাথে করছেন, কি নীরবে করছেন। কোথাও কনগ্রাচুলেট করতে গেছি, কোনো আইজি যিনি এই কাজটাকে ইনিশিয়েট করেছেন, কোনো স্পেশালি কোনো এসপি কে বলেছি, তিনি পার্সোনালি আমাকে ফোন করে বলেছেন, এটা তো আমরা করছি না, এভাবে বলবেন না, আসলে এটা আপনারাই করছেন, আর আমাদের সিভিক ভলেন্টিয়াররা করছেন। এই যারা আজকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করছেন তাদের জিজ্ঞেস করা হয়েছিল, আচ্ছা যদি আপনাদের এই এসপি সাহেব বদলে যান তাহলে কি কাজটা হবে? বলো কেন হবে না, ওই কাঁচিই বলেছিল আগের বার, কেন হবে না, আমরা তো শিখে যাচ্ছি। ওই যে বাচ্চাগুলো আসে আমাদের সেন্টারে, ওরা তো খুব আনন্দ করে আসছে, ওরা আগে আসতো না, এখন আই এম সরি আই উইল ট্রান্সলেট। সো তো আমরা তো এখন তো ওরা আসছে, তো এটা এই ধন্যবাদটা আমাদের তাদের পাওয়ার কথা। আমি কৌশিকদাকে আলাদা করে, আমার মনেই হয় না কৌশিকদাকে আমাদের ধন্যবাদ দেওয়ার কথা, আমার মনেই হয় না সেটা। সত্যি কত কষ্ট করে তারা এসছে, কত দূর দূরান্ত থেকে। আমি জানি সুন্দরবনে যখন ট্রেনিং হয় ওরা বলে আগের দিন রাত 3টেয় বেরোতে হয়। যেখানে অনেক মানুষ আছেন, তাদের নাম করলে অদ্ভুত লাগে। মনোহর বাবু বসে আছেন, একদম অন্য ঘটনা বলছে, এটা ফর্মাল ধন্যবাদ জ্ঞাপন নয়, সবাই জানলে খুশি হবে। সেদিন শুনছিলাম, আমাদের মানবকে চেনেন আপনারা সবাই, মানবের মোহরের একটা ছোট বোন হয়েছে। তো মনোহর বাবুর কাছে আমরা বলেছি যে যদি কেউ একটু আমাদের হেল্প করে খুব সুবিধা হয়, মানবের মেয়েটাকে যদি দেখে যায়। উনি কথা দিয়েছিলেন যে কাউকে পাঠাবেন, সেই দিনে উনি পাঠাতে পারেননি জন্য, যেদিনে ওনার পাঠাবার কথা পাঠাতে পারেননি জন্য, সেই দিনে উনি ওনার পুত্রবধূকে পাঠিয়েছেন মানবের এই ছোট মেয়েটিকে সাহায্য করার জন্য। এদের কন্ট্রিবিউশনে ভারতবর্ষ চলছে। ওইখানে একজন উমাশঙ্কর বাবু বলে আছেন, তিনি এলেন কি একটা কাজ করতে। সন্ধ্যেবেলায় জগন্নাথের মুখে শুনলাম তার টিকিট কনফার্ম হয়নি। আমি বললাম উনি ফিরলেন কি করে? বললো উনি একটা কম্বল নিয়েই এসেছিলেন, উনি জানতেন ওনার টিকিট নাও কনফার্ম হতে পারে, উনি ওই ইয়েতে স্লিপিং ক্লাসে বসে চলে যাবেন। এদের জন্য এই ঠান্ডা, এই শীতে এদের জন্যই কিন্তু এই কাজটা সম্ভব হচ্ছে। আর নানরিতমের যদি ধন্যবাদ কাউকে দিতে হয়, ধন্যবাদ বলে মনে করি না, ধন্যবাদ কাউকে দিতে হয় তাহলে নানরিতমের ছেলে মেয়েরা কি অক্লান্ত পরিশ্রম করে বিভিন্ন দিকে, এই একই ছেলেমেয়েরা এই আজ বাঁকুড়া, কাল কালিম্পং, পরশু আলিপুরদুয়ার, তারপরে নেমে এলো, এসেই হলো যেতে হবে একবার কালিম্পং এ মিটিং আছে, জগন্নাথকে বলে ওখানে বলে তোকে যেতে হয়। আমি শুধু জগন্নাথ বলে বলছি না, এটা একা জগন্নাথের কাজ নয়, এখানে জগন্নাথ, মানব, স্বরূপ, স্বপন, কৃষ্ণেন্দু কে নয়, আমি রথিন, পিনাকি, আমার সবার নাম বলার কথা। কিন্তু সত্যি সত্যি তাদের সকলের ধন্যবাদ প্রাপ্য। আর কৌশিকদা আমাদেরই লোক, আমি আশা করবো কৌশিকদা আরো আসবেন, আরো থাকবেন। কৌশিকদা যেখানে যান সেই জায়গা আনন্দে ভরে যায়। ওর জ্ঞানের, মহারাজের মুখে শুনতাম 2 ধরনের জ্ঞানী লোক আছে। এক ধরনের জ্ঞানী লোকের কাছে গেলে, মহারাজ একটা খুব সুন্দর আর্টিকেল আছে ওয়াইজ পিপল বলে, যে এক ধরনের মানুষের কাছে গেলে মনে হয় ও আচ্ছা আচ্ছা তিনি হয়তো খুব পণ্ডিত, মনে হয় আচ্ছা আমিও তো এর মতো হতে পারি, তিনি ওই মানুষকে ইন্সপায়ার করেন। আর এক ধরনের জ্ঞানী লোক আছে যাদের কাছে গেলে আমরা ভয়ে ভয়ে পুকুরে যাই, ওরে বাপরে বাপ আমি কিচ্ছু জানি না, ইনি কত বিদ্বান পণ্ডিত। কৌশিকদার প্রথম সারির লোক, কৌশিকদার প্রেজেন্স মনে হয় যেন তিনি আমারই মতো কিছু বুঝছেন না, জানেন না, কিন্তু কি অবলীলাক্রমে নিজের সব জিনিসটা বুঝিয়ে দিতে পারেন। তা আজকে সত্যি সত্যি খুব ভালো লাগছে, সবাই এসছে, কৌশিকদাও শুনেছেন ওদের কথা, আমাদের টিচার্সরাও আছে। And we are extremely grateful to our dedicated Felix teachers who made this possible. EFA is possible only because of you. Your dedication, your hard work really gave this platform to serve you all through wherever areas we are there. It's because of your contribution, your dedication, your love for your students. We are extremely grateful to all of you. Thank you all.
Guests will wait. Yes, we will
Students and teachers of the Felix School, students and teachers of the Felix School who are here, kindly come up. We want a photograph with you all to serve. In the students one round, teachers another round. Please come up on the stage.
Students of Felix School, please come up.
হ্যাঁ লাইভ কেটে দাও, কিন্তু কোথায় বেটার হবে ছবিটা? সুবর্ণা কোথায় বেটার হবে? সুবর্ণা এখানটা নেমে এসে করলে ভালো হবে।
Yes, please.
ওখানে